Hi, thanks for joining. Lanell here. I have the privilege of sitting down with Mr. Jim Cates, who has long been a fighter for Republican principles and values and has served in many different capacities. About a few things going on right now in local politics. But before we get into that, Mr. Cates, tell me again your background with the Republican Party.
Well, I'm old to start with. I got involved in politics back in 1964. I was in college, too young to vote, but Barry Goldwater was a candidate at the time, and he really got me fired up about government being too big. Now, this was 1964, if you can imagine. But he said, government's too big, it's too intrusive in our lives, and we just have to change things. So, because of Barry Goldwater, I've been involved ever since. And probably 90% of the people that are going to watch this weren't alive when I started getting involved in the Republican Party. But over the years, I've served as chairman of the Shawnee County Republicans, and of course, you're the chairperson now, and you've got the exciting job. I loved being chairman of the party. But this goes back, my gosh, this is back in the 80s. And again, viewers of this that weren't alive in the 80s either. I guess I am old.
I was around in the 80s for sure. But I was caring about politics since pre-kindergarten. But anyway, go on.
And then I served as 2nd District Chairman for a while of the Republican Party. I was appointed to fill an interim position in the state Senate. And then I had a couple of terms in the Kansas House. So pretty much have done all of it, and not necessarily successful, not necessarily that good of a legislator, but I'm still passionate about the fact there's so much we can do and need to do at the city, county, state level, and at the city level, the local level. Lanell, this is really where we can affect change. Now, we all have our views on the national election, and it certainly is important that we get out and support our candidate of choice, which, of course, would be Donald Trump. But the point being, you and I are not going to affect that much change at the national level, but we certainly can in Topeka, Kansas. We certainly can in Shawnee County. And you and I have talked about this off the air. And you are in a position to affect so much change in our community. And I went for probably a 10-year period, and I was pretty inactive. I wasn't a political activist. Meeting you a few weeks ago, now the batteries are charged again. So, and I'll attribute that to you because you are a bundle of energy, wisdom, the whole 9 yards.
I'm with a really great team, and I so appreciate all that you've been feeding into me with your expertise and wisdom and knowledge. And one thing I really want people to understand. Side note, I'm teaching a civics class to high school students right now. And one thing I'm trying to stress with them and just anybody I meet who's interested is politics is closer to you than you may think, especially at the local level. You write an email,
Absolutely.
You make a phone call, you go give testimony at a public hearing, you can make an impact. And that's what our government is about. We're self-governed. We should be self-governed. We need to stay self-governed. And so we must speak up. Yeah. And we have to be able to debate the issues as well. I think that's so important because that's iron sharpens iron, and we can come up with better policies, better spending, less taxation when we're able to debate all that. But anyway.
And you're so right. And again, at the local level, we're going to have access to our elected officials. When you get to the senatorial level, even the congressional level, certainly, most people watching this today will not have ever had the opportunity to have met their U.S. senator, and probably not their member of Congress either. But at the local level, we have an opportunity not only to meet, but get to know the people that are in charge, the people that are running our city, our county, and our legislators locally.
Yeah. That's so true. And those local decisions are so important. I mean, school boards, that affects a lot of people's everyday lives.
Yeah.
City and county, and how much we're getting taxed on our property. That's a big deal that really impacts individuals' lives in a community. So it's important to be in touch with those local elected officials to
Yeah.
let your voice be heard.
Yeah, government spending is so important. And, it gets back, there's so many issues that basically point out the differences between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party.
Yes, sir.
To me, one that I've used for years is Republicans were more than willing to give someone a hand up. Democrats are more than willing to give somebody a hand out. And there's a huge difference in the two. We're compassionate. We just want to help the people that are helping themselves. It's just so simple.
I'm really glad that you bring that up, because that's been on my mind recently. Is it almost feels, well, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like, and you see it too, that the left, with their socialistic ideals, just wants to redistribute the wealth, but we want to make a better tax environment so that more people, everybody, has a potential to succeed. And then, on a side note too, I mean, as opposed to redistributing the wealth, individuals, I think, who are Republicans and doing well financially, hopefully, are more willing to give privately than want to give a lot to the government, which again causes so much waste.
Yeah, and
in
statistics
between.
point that out. Again, there's been so much research done on that. In terms of contributing money, Republicans far exceed Democrats in that respect. But again, another major difference in the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, and if you're waffling on any candidate out there, folks, this is a reason you shouldn't be waffling. You should be voting Republican. And that's the issue of voter ID, voter
Yes.
identification. Think about what it is you can do without showing a voter or without identification. Cashing a check. Yeah, and the list goes on and on and
Getting on
on.
a plane.
Everywhere you go, you're
Right.
asked for an ID, with the exception of voting in most states. Now, Kansas, because of Chris Kobach and
Yes.
his efforts, we have a strong voter ID law in
Thank
Kansas. And the reason I bring up voter ID in Kansas, we don't have a voter fraud problem. But the way we should look at voter ID is look at it as you're buying a homeowner's insurance policy, a policy for your home. You've got it in place in hopes that you'll never have to use it. But if something surfaces to where there's a need for it, you've got the security in place in voter ID. But Democrats, historically, at every turn, have opposed voter identification. There is no reason whatsoever in the world to oppose voter ID unless you're looking for voter fraud.
I believe so.
It's just politics. It's government 101. That if we want to ensure and secure our voter sanctity, and there's nothing more important out there than our vote. And if we get away from having that vote of ours secured, we've lost our country. We just have lost it. So for that reason, there's issues, frankly, I can agree with the Democrats on. But I could never vote for a Democrat because, again, if they believe in getting away from the concept of voter identification, there's no way in the world I could ever vote for a Democrat. Because that's the foundation of our democracy, is the sanctity and honesty of our votes.
I agree. I want to go back to the idea of Republicans being compassionate, because I think we've kind of lost that narrative maybe as a whole, but we truly are the more compassionate group. We so often, like we say, are the ones that will give more privately to people in need, but also we're the people that say, government, stop growing. We don't want the wealth redistributed. Let people be free to make and keep more of their own money. Let's have an economy where people aren't taxed out of their homes, taxed out of their ability to provide for themselves and their family. Let's not have a system where it's so hard to make it in business, particularly small business, that people can't support themselves without government financial help. And I just feel the creep of socialism gaining speed, especially with the Democratic presidential candidate, whether she comes out and says it or not. Harris just wanting to.
Well, you know, you're right, and that also gets into racial and gender diversity. You know, if there's any party that's got it wrong, it's the Democrat Party. The Republican Party consistently has said, if you're the best qualified person for the job, you get the job, regardless of whether you're Latino, regardless of whether you're black, regardless of whether you're white, regardless of whether you're male, regardless if you're female. The point being, we are not gender or racial specific. If you're the best for the job, you get it. We don't need quota systems in the Republican Party to give somebody that's not qualified for a job, a position, whatever it may be. Absolutely. To me, that's insulting.
I do too.
You know, if I was a minority and I was looking at a racial quota that 10% of my race, 10% of my gender, whatever, will be given a job regardless of my abilities, to me, that's insulting. And it also hurts America. You know, we need to put our best foot forward, and that means the best qualified to do the job. We're colorblind in this party. We're gender. We don't take a look at gender.
I think it's important along those lines to remember why the party was even formed in the first place. And our first Republican platform, as the Republican Party was formed with presidential candidate Abraham Lincoln, was to stop the expansion of slavery. It was for equal rights for humankind. You know, it was to get rid of slavery and polygamy and to make Kansas come into the Union as a free state. And then we were also the party to give women the right to vote, to recognize skin color doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter. We are people. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is for all. And I feel like it's so possible to create racism when you make such a big deal about hiring quotas and whatnot, because then somebody can say, oh, that's a hire just because of X, Y, or Z. And that's terrible.
It is terrible. It is. And it hurts. It hurts. It's divisive. Bottom line.
And that's the last thing that we want. I'll go so far as to say that we are one race. We are the human race.
That wasn't brought up last night in the debate, and I wish it would have been. Yeah, I wish it would have been.
Yeah, interesting. So what did you think of the debate?
I think Trump made some good points. Again, the major issue in this campaign should be immigration, illegal immigration. You know, and I don't know that many people, Lanell, that are against immigration. I'm certainly not, because you and I are part of, you're at the bottom end of it and I'm at the top end, but the baby boomer generation, most of us are retired now. And it was the biggest population bubble ever in the history of mankind. There simply aren't enough Americans in this country to replace us that are retired. That's one of the reasons salaries are going through the roof and we're having an inflationary spiral. There's not enough people here. 90% of the people coming across the border are good people. They're going to be good citizens. Your Mexican community, by and large, A, they've got a great work ethic. B, they've got a strong religious foundation. Most coming across the border are Catholics. They've got that foundation going for them. They've got great family values. Once they get an education, Lanell, these people are going to be Republicans. They're Republicans now, they just don't know it yet. But they will in time, because, you know, if you take a look at that four-legged stool, 3 of the 4 legs are already in place for our Latinos coming across to be good, solid citizens and good voting Republicans. But what we have to figure out a way is that 10% of the people coming across this border. We've got to figure out a way to keep them on the other side of the border. We need a strong immigration law that's going to allow the quality people to come into this country and keep the trash out. It just boils down to that issue, and Donald Trump hit on that several times last night. It's a big issue. Inflation. Again, Republicans, we believe in controlling the cost of government as best we can. The Democrat Party, there is no control in terms of money.
Yeah.
We've got an open checkbook. Being on a fixed income, if inflation goes up 20%, our quality of life is now reduced by 20%. It's just that simple. So I thought Donald Trump made some good points last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And he does have a track record of, I would say, even exceeding what he says he's going to do as president. And we were certainly living in better economic times. Energy independence is just so important.
How anybody could support shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, for example. How anybody could support, slowing down the growth of our oil industry in this country. We have more oil now, potentially, than any other country in the world, including Venezuela. We're number one. And as a result of the Biden presidency, we're back to where we're buying oil from the Middle East. It makes no sense. Under Donald Trump, we had 4 years of oil independence. We actually had reached a point to where we were independent. We weren't dependent upon the Middle East.
Dependent on our enemies.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah. I wish that could have been emphasized a little more last night,
Right.
because it's such an important issue.
Well, and it affects every part of the economy, including groceries.
Mm-hmm.
And, being able to get around and have energy and electricity and being able to afford groceries, these are things that affect the common people. Most of us. It is a big deal. So,
And when you start taking a look at the issues, if we could just boil it down in November, if people truly would vote on the 4 years of the Trump presidency as opposed to the 4 years of the Biden presidency. If you thought you had it better under Biden than Trump, vote for Joe Biden. That's exactly where your vote should be. But if you think that Donald Trump, the 4 years of Donald Trump, was better than Joe Biden, then not only vote, but please talk to your friends and neighbors to make them realize that we had it so much better under Republican leadership.
absolutely. And I like to say policy trumps personality every single time. I will admit, before 2016, I was kind of off put by Trump's personality. But then something flipped. I saw his policy go into place and how his policy was effective in helping everyday Americans live in a better economy, live with more freedom, more peace in the Middle East. And not only did I just appreciate all that he accomplished, but I started to love his personality as well. I know it's not perfect. I know I'm not perfect. But policy trumps personality
You and I might
every
not
single time.
totally agree on this issue.
For winning votes, maybe not. But me, I care about results.
And the results have been wonderful.
And the results have
He
been
gave us
wonderful.
4 wonderful years in this country.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you for tuning in, and appreciate so much your time, Mr. Cates. And
Well,
any closing thoughts?
I so appreciate you being the chairperson of the party. We're lucky, we're blessed to have you in Shawnee County.
Thank you. Certainly working on a great team, you being a big part of it. And let's get out there and keep on fighting for freedom and get our candidates elected. God bless.